I don't know what they were really looking for, but they weren't looking for a good film, it seems like, because that's what they were given, and they weren't happy with it.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yannis Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike to dig into their personal connection to a current or classic release. However, this week we're continuing our conversation, or retrospective really, of the Star Wars saga by talking about the 2017 film Star Wars The Last Jedi. And I am honored to welcome back to the show Kerri Jones. Welcome back to the Crooked Table Podcast.
Thank you, Rob. I'm happy to be here, as always.
So last time we had you on was back in March, and we talked about Captain Marvel, another geek property that pissed off a significant portion of the white male fan base. I mean, let's just throw it out there. So I'm excited to dig into, I'm noticing a pattern here, basically, is what I'm saying. Because when I said about doing the Star Wars, you immediately jumped on The Last Jedi.
Yes, I seem to enjoy the controversial movies here.
Well, maybe that's just because the controversial movies, I guess, there's more of a conversation behind them. There's more, they have something to say. So to lead into The Last Jedi specifically, and why that's the one you jumped at, what is your relationship with the Star Wars saga? When did you first come across it or get interested in it?
Well, I didn't grow up with it, so I don't have that, experience back in the 80s with it. But I have watched the originals several times in my adult life, and definitely am loving the whole inclusion of Rey and her movies. So, maybe I liked this movie because I don't have such a "you ruined my childhood" thought or complaint about it.
Right.
So I have a little bit more of a fresher look at it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about, how do you feel about the prequels then and the original trilogy? Are you a big fan of those, or you're just more like,
I love them. I love them. Star Wars is so unique. It's got sci-fi, it's got rom-com, it's got drama, it's got, alien creatures. I mean,
but
what doesn't it have?
It hasn't had a lot of female representation until recently. That's a problem.
That's true.
Or representation in general. And I think that's one thing that I really love about the new movies is that their cast is not only there's a lot of females present in the cast, led by Rey, of course. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, people of color.
Yes.
Oscar Isaac is, I think, Guatemalan. John Boyega is African or American. Well, not African American, but he's a black guy. Mm-hmm. And
he's English, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. That's why I was like American. No, he's not. Mm-hmm. I don't know and that's the other thing. They don't have African British. It's black.
They're just
right?
British.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
We're so used to putting things in little boxes in this country, I guess.
Yes.
And then Kelly Marie Tran, which we'll get into now, and joining this movie as Rose. So I like that and that's one thing that Disney has been really pushing forward with this franchise, but really all of their franchises, that progress in representation and diversity. And that's been really heartening to see, even as a straight white male.
People want to see themselves on the screen.
Exactly.
And they should.
Absolutely.
And not in a sidekick kind of way. So definitely makes sense, and I love it. And I love that Leia's gone from a sex slave to a general now.
That's
and
right.
she's running the show.
Well,
so.
even when she was a sex slave, she choked out her kidnapper.
She did.
So that was pretty satisfying, at least.
It really was.
It's like for all the Harvey Weinsteins out there, it's like let's make that happen.
And she never put up with any bullshit
either. Yeah,
so
that's true. Even in the 70s and 80s, you had not a lot of female representation, but you had one really strong female character. Yeah. So who in the original movie gets rescued and then immediately takes over.
That's right.
Which is great.
That's right. Showing her leadership skills.
That's right.
She's bossy.
She is. So to catch up with Last Jedi, what were your thoughts on The Force Awakens and the way that they modernized the original film and then also sort of kind of reboot / remade it in a way. Because that was the big controversy or criticism, I guess, of The Force Awakens. Is, well, this is like very much A New Hope. Like there's a lot of elements that are taken directly from that.
Well, I love J.J. Abrams. First of all, he's pretty amazing. So I didn't have any problems with it. I loved it. It totally fit in with with what they did before. Mm-hmm. I mean, the prequels were kind of dry for me. I wasn't really a big fan of them. They were very left-brained, I would say. But I loved Force Awakens. It brought everything that was good in the originals and made it new and made it fresh, and yet you also felt that nostalgia to it. Mm-hmm. So I was cool with it. Yeah,
I think Abrams basically rationalized it as you have to, at this point, this is the film picking up 30 years after Return of the Jedi, so it's really the first sequel we've gotten since the original trilogy. Right. And I think his thought process was you have to kind of go back in order to go forward. To kind of bring everybody back. Remember Star Wars? Remember how great it is? All right, now let's. And that was the reportedly George Lucas's reaction to The Force Awakens was kind of like he's like there's nothing new in this. Say what you will about the prequels, but there's new characters, there's new ship designs, there's new things like that. And I think a lot of the fans were maybe a little disappointed in The Force Awakens that it's like they have X-wings, they are on a sand planet, and everything's very familiar. But I think. Yeah,
but then they would have complained if it wasn't familiar.
Well, that's what we're here to talk about.
So come on now. I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
I mean,
that was my reaction. Was I'm cool with that. You get a free pass with that. Especially since you want to win back fan goodwill after the prequels kind of divided fans the first time. But once the next one comes, once Episode 8 comes, you got to give me something new and fresh and different. And I think Rian Johnson did that. And that's why it's so funny. That movie came out, The Force Awakens, and everybody's like, it's so much like the other movies.
It's too the same. Now it's too different.
Now it's too different.
We can't handle it.
Exactly. People just want to complain about whatever.
And I think it's mostly about the inner journey, So it's and that whole the fight against good and evil within oneself. So. It doesn't really, it's okay, they have X-Wings again. You would have been pissed if you didn't see an X-Wing or so.
Exactly.
So just stop complaining and just enjoy. They did a great job on both of them, I think.
I think so too. And part of this saga's, the whole thought process behind it on Lucas's part is that everything is kind of cyclical. Like it's all about legacy. It's all about things come back around. So there's a lot of parallels between. Maybe there's too many parallels in Force Awakens to A New Hope, but there's even this one. There's some parallels to Empire. I'm sure there will be some parallels between Return of the Jedi and Rise of Skywalker and things like that. So that's kind of baked into the story. It's literally the same lightsaber that Anakin had was passed to Luke, and now Rey and Kylo Ren are like fighting over who's going to have that lightsaber in this trilogy. So. I think it's all about, it's all about legacy. It's all about things coming back around, facing, Maz Kanata says in the last one, she says about how, evil takes many forms, the Sith, the Jedi, the Empire, the First Order, whatever. Well, not the evil with the Jedi, but you know what I'm saying. So it's,
the dark side.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what I really love about this movie is that Star Wars has always been spiritual to me. I love the spiritual aspect. I'm kind of a New Age hippie. I used to own my own spiritual store, New Age store. And so the spiritual journey has been very important to me, that journey to enlightenment, that journey to awakening. And that's what I feel like The Last Jedi touches on the most. It really goes into it. Mm-hmm. We see it before, but here I was like, oh my gosh, that's that, and I made these connections that I didn't see before in Star Wars. Yes, it felt like it had a spiritual tone to it, but when I watched Last Jedi, I really saw a lot of Buddhism. I saw a lot of Taoism in it, and that's what I enjoyed. And Buddhism is all about breaking out of that cyclical nature of life and reincarnation and becoming enlightened and moving into nirvana and maybe understanding both sides of the Force and being at one with the Force in its totality instead of it having to be a dualistic nature and we have to be a good Jedi or a bad Jedi. Are you a good witch or a bad witch? You know, like it doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
Right.
And I feel like the more in tune you are with the Force in all of its aspects, the stronger you are as a Jedi, as a Sith, whatever. So that's what I really loved about Last Jedi. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it. So
no, you're 100% hitting on exactly one of the main things I want to talk about.
Great.
So
let's do it.
Before we're already kind of getting into it, so let's listen to a little bit of the trailer for The Last Jedi.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now. Let the past die. Kill it. If you have to. That's the only way to become what you were meant to be. We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down. Come on! This is not going to go the way you think. Fulfill your destiny.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
That was a little bit of the trailer for Star Wars The Last Jedi, written and directed by Rian Johnson. Obviously, this came out in 2017 to much critical acclaim and very divisive audience response. Even now, you just comment on any internet thread, just say The Last Jedi, and it's going to piss people off. But regardless, as much as people want to complain about the movie, it made $620 million domestic. It was the highest grossing movie of 2017, $1.3 billion worldwide. Against a $317 million production budget. So it was one of the more costly Star Wars movies, I would assume, and nominated for Oscars and all that stuff. So, you kind of already talked about why you chose this one. Let me ask you this. Is The Last Jedi the best Star Wars movie?
Ooh, that's tough. Are we including like Solo and Rogue One?
I mean, you can include them, and I still wouldn't put them anywhere near the top
I don't know.
for me.
This one's kind of. I really love The Force Awakens, but this one, I just feel such an affinity to it. Mm-hmm. So it may not necessarily be my favorite, but it's the one that hits closest to home for me. So yeah, maybe it's my favorite. I'll just we'll just categorize it.
So to what do you attribute that feeling hitting close to home to you? Is it the spirituality mostly, or that and kind of the female leadership kind of traits as well?
I like the fact that she's a nobody, and that she may not have all of the training. Oh gosh, there's so many complaints. She's such a Mary Sue. She learned the Force in 30 seconds. I mean,
but did she though?
No, that's what I was just
movie,
thinking about this morning. It's like this woman has been on a desert planet for most of her life.
Right.
I mean, and just abandoned by her parents. That's a rough life, you know, and training with her staff. I mean, she's not she's not a fluffy little Pollyanna type woman anyway. So I don't know where they get that whole Mary Sue thing from, but it could be the female character, but I really just loved how they delved into the training. I also loved how Luke kind of turned his back on it and he realized that the ego is not where it's at. His hubris of being, Master Skywalker. We're not seeing all this kind of virtue signaling, I guess, is maybe what it's not so goody-goody as the originals were, where there's very much clear-cut right and wrong. It's definitely a little bit of a gray area, and I think that's what's closer to understanding the Force, is that, you're going to have that good and bad, and you're still can be a whole person. There's not this dichotomy between the two. There's not a fight between the two.
It feels like a deconstruction of the franchise in a way.
Yes.
It's like, have you seen any of Rian Johnson's previous movies? He did Looper.
Yes,
he did
I saw Looper.
The Brick, The Brothers Bloom, and then he has a new one coming out called Knives Out that I'm really excited to see.
I did see Looper. Knives Out looks really good.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
He tends to try and take a genre and then blow out the possibilities of what you can really wring from it. And I think in this one, it does feel like he's like, well, what is a Star Wars movie? What do we think a Star Wars movie is, and how can I invert that? And
he turned every notion on
brilliantly.
its head, which is why everyone wants to complain about it. And it's like, we see character growth. I mean, we see people changing and learning new things, and maybe regretting some of the things that they did before, and it's more human to me.
Right.
It's not so much this like space opera that's kind of kooky and
I think the performances reflect that too. I think if you look at the prequels, especially, the acting is very wooden, and they're basically the actors are just props for the spectacle. And
yes, I agree on that.
I think they're, I still love Revenge of the Sith. I have very mixed feelings on the other two, but I think that kind of limits how far you can take the story and how much you can connect to it emotionally.
Right.
Whereas in this one, it feels like everybody is kind of set loose because it's not what we're used to seeing.
Yeah,
from
the
Star Wars.
prequels were very much about politics to me.
Yeah.
Which I'm about the human being. I mean, I have a psychology degree, so I'm more about that journey within than what's happening with the Senate and all of this other
taxation of trade routes.
Right. I mean, that was just like, so that's where I enjoyed this one, and they're not so clear cut. It's a little bit more of a gray area, and you kind of see the interaction of the good with the evil, and the finger touching sequence, which I just freaking love. So can't wait to talk about that part.
Yeah, it's more philosophical and spiritual than it is political.
Yes.
And Star Wars has always been inherently political, but this one kind of sets that aside for a minute to focus on other issues. There's some of the political stuff.
The Rose and the Finn,
yes. Yeah.
But as far as what's happening with Rey, like, I'm all about that. I want to see a whole movie just about that, and about her relationship with Kylo, and just the two of them developing and kind of playing off each other and where it goes. And so I'm really hoping that's what we're going to see in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited!
As of this recording, we still have a couple months, but we're getting there.
We're getting there.
So I was thinking that one of the easiest ways to kind of go through this was just to go subplot by subplot. So we'll take the Poe storyline, then we'll take the Rey and Kylo, the Reylo section.
Get your head out of your cockpit, Poe. Gosh.
Which was a line that Carrie Fisher came up with.
Oh.
She kind of helped Rian Johnson with the little bit of this. She was a script doctor for many years, so she kind of helped him fine-tune some of that, and that was obviously a Carrie Fisher edition.
We miss her so much.
I know. I like you have your Leia shirt on.
Yeah, I got my Leia shirt.
So we'll talk about Poe, Rey, and Kylo, and then Finn, and then the finale where everybody's kind of together. So starting with Poe, I think this is one of the... I feel like the Rose stuff gets brought up the most as to why people are pissed off about this movie, but I think for the toxic male side of it, I feel like this is the subplot that is really, you can really hang that on, because The story
sure.
starts out, and Poe is already kind of, you get a little of that playful energy with him and General Hux when he's like,
I
have a
love
call
that
with his
part.
mother. And Hux
Kind of pasty. General
and
Hux.
Hux is actually a fun character in this one. He didn't do anything for me in The Force Awakens. He was just basically had that one big scene where he was not seeing
so
out.
angry, yeah.
Like, we will destroy that Republic.
I like that actor a lot, though.
Yeah, I do too. And that's why it was a little bit of a bummer in The Force Awakens. I didn't feel like they gave him much to do. Mm-hmm. And here, right out the gate, you're like, oh man, Hux is kind of like fun. Like he's an
being
interesting
slid
character
across
now.
the floor
Yeah.
and stuff. It's great.
He's like Snoke's little bitch, and then Kylo's little bitch. I mean, that's made him they made him kind of a comic relief character in a way, but
Yes.
still imposing at the same time. So I love that, and so the big opening sequence involves Poe leading a flight squadron to take out this massive ship called the Dreadnought, exactly, and going against Leia's orders.
Oh, that pissed me off. When he shuts it off right when she goes to say order. Ooh!
Yeah.
How dare you?
So-
How dare you?
So my big takeaway here with this one is that I feel like this is really one of the first times that I've actually cared about the Rebels. Like, you see the other movies, and yes, I care about them because it's Luke there, because it's Leia, Han, whatever. But this is the first sequence that I was like, oh my God, were you losing our.
Yeah, it's not so much like Star Trek red shirts where
Right.
they're gonna
Yeah.
be just completely dismissed.
Or it's just like I like tune out when they're like, oh, red leader. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know who you people are. I don't care. I'm paying attention to Luke, and then there's a bunch of Porkins and other people just showing up in there. I'm like, yeah, okay. But in this one, you actually feel for it because they focus on Rose's sister.
Yeah.
And I right out the gate, the way this movie is shot, the way that, the cinematography, the score, it feels like this is the most gorgeous production of any of the Star Wars movies, like by a significant margin.
Agreed. Before you started recording, we were talking about John Williams, who, I mean, he can make or break a movie. Like, the score is just amazing. It's just amazing. And the technology, obviously, we're getting better and better and better. So it's got to look better and better every time, I think. We have high standards, especially with Marvel movies, what they can do. So, yeah, that first shot where he's going around and destroying all the cannons is just awesome.
And then the silent moment where Poe is like, fire.
Oh, yes.
And Paige is trying to get the remote.
Very dramatic.
Yeah. Wordless. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even think Paige Tico has a line of dialogue in this movie. It's just all visuals.
And she's so traumatized by what she's seeing.
Right.
With all the other bombers being blown up, so.
It's great. It's like,
It's great. I just wish
riveting
she
scene.
would have climbed up the ladder and actually got out of the ladder, or else she wouldn't have fallen. But that's what you hope. That's what drives the movie, is these things that you wish didn't happen.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and I feel like, right from this opening sequence, which is roughly, I'd say probably the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie is this whole dreadnought thing. It lays the groundwork. It sets the stakes for Poe's recklessness and his arc. It sets the stakes for the resistance and their last legs that they're based. This movie
Where they're at.
essentially chronicles their last stand.
Yeah.
After that opening sequence, it's like a few hundred rebels, and that's it in the galaxy.
400,
Yeah.
I think she says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On 3 ships, I think. And they're like, we need to keep this, we just need to not die and survive this and keep the cause alive.
This was an opportunity for them to also start complaining about the movie with the bombs. Oh, how the bombs, the gravity, and
Oh boy.
wah,
All of a
wah,
sudden,
the bombs.
physics matter in a Star Wars movie.
Get over it, people. But yeah, it was a really intense scene.
Yeah.
And then when we find out that they're being tracked through light speed, scary.
It is scary.
I mean, they can't get away. So you're like trapped. They're trapped in a corner. I mean, they're moving, but it feels very much like they're trapped in a corner.
We have them on the edge of a string.
Right,
Hux says,
exactly. Exactly.
This is also, let's just get this out of the way. This is probably, I mean, I love Empire and I love Force Awakens and, A New Hope. Those are probably my top. Did I say 5? Yeah, those are my top 4. And then maybe Revenge of the Sith after those, right? But this is easily the best script of all the Star Wars movies. I mean, I think.
I would agree with you.
It feels like, Empire is great, but it's also, I don't think it has as much going on. I don't think it's as rich in its themes, in its commentary, and you were saying about the spirituality aspect of it.
It's deep. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to dig into in this one. That's why I'm like, we're not gonna talk for 2 hours, but let's keep on task, because otherwise we might go on a tangent and then go on for a while. But there's a lot to talk about in this one. I think it's, and I don't know if that's a testament to Rian Johnson's talents or the fact that the saga is just at that point where they need to do something new. They need to do something fresh. Like if this movie had felt like Empire Part 2, then people would have just,
complained about that.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's, for me, a lot of people love Solo, and I think it's fine. That just feels like Star Wars being like, all right, let's just throw these objects in a blender and do another Star Wars. There's nothing that doesn't really do much for me. It's it's okay. It's
I didn't feel too
Star
emotionally
Wars.
Connected to that one.
Right.
I felt a little bit more connected to Rogue One than Solo.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
But yes, it is deeper and richer, and I think people who don't like the film, or maybe not like it, but they hate it, either don't understand film, or they don't understand the Force, or they don't understand humanity. And I mean, it connects on all the levels. There's action, there's drama, there's romance. I mean,
it depends.
What's not to like, people?
I mean, I agree with you. It's obviously it's entirely subjective, but I think it depends also how much you're in love with the Star Wars formula. I think, if this movie kind of breaks from that formula in many ways, as we've sort of already started to say, and if you're a person that clings to, well, no, a Star Wars movie is like XYZ, and then this movie's like, what about ZYX? And you're like, wait a minute, that's not what Star Wars is supposed to be. So I don't know if that I think that's why you get a lot of the males responding to the fact that Poe is set up as this hero, is like essentially kind of the Han Solo of the Resistance, and then immediately is demoted. Like 5 minutes into the movie, they're like, wait, what? Why is the hero being demoted? I mean, granted, it makes sense in the context of the movie, but I feel like they're coming to it with that. I've never seen that before. That doesn't feel right.
What baseline do they have to work from? Because there are the originals that are their own thing. Then there are the prequels, which are completely different things. So what exactly were they expecting,
Right. I'm with you. I'm playing devil's advocate here, being like, maybe this is what the issue was. And that's another issue another thing that I think this trilogy is really weighing the pressure of. This has to try and marry the prequels and the originals. And that's where,
which is not
tonally,
an easy task
which is not, no,
all.
because like you said, they're like night and day in a
really
lot of ways.
Are.
So I think that's, for a certain, I think there's certain fans that have their own, legitimate, however they feel about the movie. They didn't care for it because of whatever.
Oh God, he drank the milk from the.
But
guy likes drinking milk. I mean, we saw that in the first one.
It's true. It's
come
true.
on, people.
But now it's green. Before it was blue. So I guess maybe it's when the green milk has to get pasteurized to make it blue or something. That's my headcanon. But I think there are people that have legitimately have mixed feelings about the movie, and then there are the people that are like, "What? A woman in charge? That's weird." So I think that's, going into this part, I think that's definitely part of why the Poe storyline is definitely part of why some people will respond to that. The fact that Poe is reprimanded by Leia, that, it's very much Leia and Holdo in charge, and that, the women are right and they're leaders, and their role in this story is to, like, Poe's role is to learn from the women in the Resistance. And I think to a certain segment that could turn them off. But for me, I think that's a really interesting, like, again, deconstruction of the hero, the like impulsive hero, the Han Solo like archetype. Right. Is like, well, maybe you don't always want to just rush in and shoot things. And I love how they kind of
jump in an X-wing and blow some stuff up.
Yeah, I love that.
But Poe is demonstrating the hubris that Luke is talking about. He's talking about this ego getting in the way of doing what's right and what helps the majority of your people. And that's what we're seeing with this man. He's getting a little too big for his britches, and I love the Laura Dern scene where she's like, where the Holdo scene, she's like, yeah, you're dangerous, you know, and she kind of has like almost a seductive,
like she's like, hey,
yeah,
and then she's like, but nah,
right, exactly.
Mic drop. Yeah, no, I love
it.
That. Yeah, she's great. I think it's Leia's line where she says, he's like, oh, there were heroes on that mission. It's like dead heroes, no
not
leaders.
Yes.
I thought that was really
yes.
short and sweet, but very powerful, actually.
Very much so.
Yeah, so that happens. Poe's demoted, which, you know,
wah, wah.
fanboy tears everywhere.
Yeah.
And then Kylo, meanwhile, we'll get to Kylo, but Kylo goes over there and can't, you know, fire on his mom. There's that moment that was revealed in the trailers.
Too, yeah.
There was that moment revealed in the trailers that we were like, oh my God, is he gonna blow up his mom? And no, the other ships come in and attack. So what were your thoughts on the Leia Force moment where she's floating in there?
Oh yeah, where she's
Mary
flying.
Poppins-ing her
She's
way.
not flying, okay? She's electromagnetically pulling herself towards the ship is what I perceived was happening, you know? And yeah, she has the Force. Like,
there's no gravity in space. It's not flying.
Right. We didn't see her, you know, we didn't see her really demonstrate her skills or her ability in the originals. So for her to, after all this time, have gained some powers, yeah, what were you expecting? And she's the freaking general. I mean, come on, she's got to be able to do something. So I loved that Rian Johnson brought in these new Jedi mind tricks and these new abilities that they have that we weren't looking, you know, we didn't see in the earlier ones. And they're new and they're different. And wah, we're going to complain about that too now. I mean, you know, Luke projecting himself across the galaxy. Like, yeah, that's a problem. Why is that a problem?
Right.
It's amazing. It's awesome that he did that, you know? So I just don't know what to do with these people. I'm shaking my head.
They established, I mean, if you look at that scene in Empire where Luke is reaching out to Leia, you can easily I don't think they meant this at the time because they weren't sure they were going to be related when they did that movie. But you can easily read that as Leia kind of already sort of tapping into the Force powers that she has there. Then you hinted at here and there, and I think this was the most blatant manifestation of that. And I really like that moment. I think it's really cool that, you know, obviously if she's about to die, that her instincts would jump in and she's able to propel herself over.
Did you want her to die? I mean,
well, but it felt like it might have been the moment that they just write her out, because at that point she was already, you know, Carrie Fisher had already passed away. So we're like, oh my God, is that how they write Leia out? That's the end of Leia? You know, when they blow up the ship, Admiral Akbar, it's a trap. It was on that ship. Oh,
I was so upset when we lost him.
Yeah. So I loved all that. And that's when Holdo takes over and has that whole scene that you mentioned.
The flyboy scene.
The flyboy scene there. She has her whole like speech about we are the spark that will light the fire, that will.
I love that.
That will, you know, burn the. Well, he says it. He kind of paraphrases her later, which is him learning the lesson finally and coming back around. So I love all that. Spark that will light the fire that will restore the Republic. Yeah, I wrote that down. So I love all that. And the fact that Poe clearly didn't, says that Holdo's not what he expected, because he probably expected a dude.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool.
And she's not sharing her plan with him.
Yeah.
Just because he's a man and demands to know. A
lot of my notes are very aggressive in that regard towards toxic males that just have issue with Holdo because she's a woman in power.
My note says toxic masculinity. Get your head out of your cockpit.
I wrote Holdo probably a big issue for toxic fans have. Too many strong women. Cry me a river, yo. Is what I wrote in my notes.
Exactly.
But yeah. So what do you think about the whole source of the Poe and Holdo conflict, which is Poe just wants answers from her, but she doesn't want to give him the answers because it's none of his fucking business, really. Right. I think that, you know, it's easy to argue that, oh, well, why didn't she just tell him? It's like, well, it's not his job.
Well, he's reckless.
He's reckless.
And
he's
then he
entitled.
still goes behind her back and
Right.
executes a plan and doesn't tell her about it. So
He launches a mutiny on her and everything. It's like, Jesus.
whether she told him or not, I would think she was going to be screwed because he's impulsive, you know.
Yeah.
And she calls it, she sees it, she tells him about it, and he still does it. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So yeah, get your head out of your cockpit. Oh gosh.
I loved that. Well, this is kind of overlapping with the Finn stuff a little bit, but we do get a cameo from Maz Kanata, who is unfortunately not in the movie.
Yes, he can.
She is probably the horniest Star Wars character, right? Because clearly that's where that was coming from. And then in the last one, she's like, "Oh, how's my boyfriend?" She's like, "I like that Wookiee." I'm like, Jesus, Maz is gonna get some.
I love her, and she's not the Jessica Rabbit, you know.
Right, she's a little yellow
right,
with the giant
exactly.
spectacles or goggles.
So I think it's great. I think it's great that they kind of brought, they had sexual tension in the first one, but it wasn't so blatant, I think.
Right.
It was a little bit more nuanced, and yeah, she definitely brings it out. And, Justin Theroux, I mean, come on, he's a hot guy, so I can understand. But yeah, that line is cute. And then I think it's 3PO's reaction, like, oh, or
well, I think Finn gives a look to Rose, like, what the hell was that? Yeah, Maz Kanata's just wandering the galaxy, just like living her life, being single.
She's doing her thing.
Yeah, doing her thing, exactly. So Finn hands Finn has Rey's beacon and hands it to Poe, which I like that Rey and Poe don't even meet until the end of the movie, which I thought was really cute.
Right.
I don't know if they're gonna put them together or anything, but I can see that happening.
Well, that's the thing, the love triangle thing.
Right.
So.
Right, and maybe if you look at it this way, Poe had to have the experience that he has in The Last Jedi to be worthy of Rey, if that's where they end up going. Of course, there's a whole Rey and Kylo thing that we'll get into very soon. Let's see. Billie Lourd, her character, this Carrie Fisher's daughter, she plays Lieutenant Connix. She's even in on it. And by the way, have you seen Booksmart?
No,
it's out on Blu-ray.
Yet.
You should see it. She's great in it in like a supporting role. It's a lot of fun. He calls Holdo a traitor. I said about the mutiny. That was really great. Leia comes in, and then the Holdo maneuver happens, which is her flying that ship, going to light speed.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that was such a thing when this came out in theaters, that theaters had like sign on the door, but like there will be like a 45-second thing in the movie. It's not a sound issue or whatever, that they were worried that fans were going to freak out and be like, what happened? The sound went out during that scene. I thought that was such a genius way of depicting that.
Perfect. Yes. Her ultimate sacrifice. I mean, what's not to love? What's not to love? Every part of this movie is great. Come on.
Yeah. And the big revelation to Poe, at least, that Holdo's whole thing was that she was more interested in protecting the light than seeming like a hero.
Right.
And I think that's
without the hubris. Without needing to have the recognition.
Not to quote Hot Fuzz, but the greater good. I don't know if you've seen Hot Fuzz, right?
Oh yes, I love that movie.
Hot Fuzz. That's a great movie. So it ultimately is revealed that the plan is for them to take the small transports to Crate. The salt planet, which is the home for the finale that we'll get to later. So I really like Poe's storyline, and it's, obviously the movie's a lot more interesting to watch than it is for us to break it down like this, because there's all the intercutting. But I think it's very straightforward, but I think it's ultimately really impactful for the character and for the franchise to have a storyline like this, where it's, get your head out of your cockpit, basically, where it's, not every, and this is something that in a way that Finn has to learn, that we'll get to in a little bit later in the finale, that sometimes you don't save people, you don't make a difference by making the big dramatic gesture.
Right.
Where Finn's like, I'm going to slam into this thing and we're going to knock it out. And Rose is like, dude, that's not, you could do that, but there's another way around it. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to go on a suicide mission necessarily. I mean, Holdo does, but that's, I think, a different case.
But she's not like, I'm going on a suicide mission.
Yeah, she's not like, I'm going to do this, guys.
Right.
She doesn't even tell anybody to do it. She's doing it. She just kind of stays behind, and that's the move that she goes for.
And I love the interconnection where you have one character talking about how you can't let your ego become too great. You have Master Skywalker talking about how his hubris, caused the whole Kylo Ren thing to happen. And then we're cutting back to another character who's doing the same thing,
Right.
His hubris is causing problems. And so, yes, you have to keep balance. Keep balance in the Force, We can't act impulsively or with anger, be rash, and think objectively. And, if you are going to make that sacrifice, you can still be a hero without having to tell everybody that you're a hero. So.
Right, yeah. The story of the movie is basically Poe, Finn, and Luke getting their heads out of their asses, basically.
Yes.
That's
And that's
essentially what it
maybe
is.
why it upsets all the fanboys,
Right.
is because, they are being knocked down a little bit. But,
Men don't automatically always know best, pretty much.
But that's where toxic masculinity is a
Right,
problem.
exactly, I
And,
agree.
And I think that's a great part of this film is that, so yeah, if you were bothered by it, maybe you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself,
Before you wreck your X-Wing, your cockpit.
Right? Exactly.
So moving into we're saving Finn for last because it dovetails most neatly into the finale, and also because I don't want to wait any longer to get to the Reylo of it all.
Yes.
So Rey shows up, meets Luke, and this is the first Star Wars film to pick up immediately after the last one ended, which I love that. And again, with the subverting expectations. We were watching the last one, be like, oh, he's gonna pick up sabers, be like, hell yeah, I'm gonna run to the rescue, and he immediately just tosses it over his shoulder,
and he moves on. And of course, everybody was angry about that because, gosh, we have to hold the lightsaber on a pedestal, I mean, that's what the whole thing is about.
Well, it's also it's such a different turn for Luke because he has always been I'm gonna go and turn Vader back to the good side, and I'm gonna go take on the Empire and all this other stuff. That was how he was. Of course, it was also when he was like 30 years younger,
right,
and less, had been through fewer life experiences and such. And even Mark Hamill was kind of reluctant with this story. Like, I don't know, this is not what I was thinking you were going to do. But, I think he came to accept it. But he was probably kind of jarring for him to read the script and have it go that way. But
it's more human.
But it's also like Luke went to all these lengths to isolate himself. Why would he then grab the saber and be like, you're right, I should go back?
Exactly.
Like, that doesn't make any
He's a broken
sense.
down man. Do you think that at this point he's going to pick this lightsaber up and just forget everything that happened that has caused him to isolate himself on this island?
Right.
No.
Like he said, what did you think was going to happen?
Right.
He's going to go take his laser sword and
face the whole army,
which is
kind of
awesome.
Does.
So I like that part of it. What do you we're kind of going a little slightly out of order, but what were your thoughts on his rationale for why he cut himself off and why he decided that it was time for the Jedi to end, basically?
I think it was shocking to him that at first he didn't want to kill his father, but he was kind of willing to kill his nephew, and then he realized how wrong that was, and it still backfired just tragically and tremendously on him. So, and I think that's more akin to real life, is that as you grow older, you become hardened, you deal with difficult things. Adulting is not so easy, and making these decisions is not so clear cut and black and white as when you're younger. And so it was really amazing to see that he's changed and he's different, and he realizes that his ego has gotten in the way of maybe what's right and what's good and what's best for not only Ben Solo but for his other students and the fate of the galaxy in general. So I loved it. I loved seeing that he wasn't as gung-ho and ready to pull on that hero mantle and save the universe again.
Well, and this Jedi are supposed to be keepers of the peace. They say that a few times, I think, in the prequels at least, when there are more than a couple Jedi at a time. And ultimately, that's his whole thing. Like, he ends up saving the day by not really fighting.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk about the deleted scene. There's a deleted scene where Rey, it's right after she says, Kylo failed you, but I won't. And she goes out and she sees ships approaching, and he tells her that it's a raiding party. They're coming to take the little fish ladies. They're so cute.
The little fish nuns,
ladies. And they're coming to be raided and pillaged, and so she automatically reacts, and she's like ready to go, just as he would when he was her age. And he says a true Jedi would do nothing unless it helps maintain balance in the Force. And of course, she still runs, and it's a great scene of her running across and like almost running vertically down a cliff. It's pretty crazy. And she gets there, and they're actually having a party, and he's laughing, and that's like a Mr. Miyagi moment for me. And I really wish that they wouldn't have cut that scene because it also ties into the Buddhist and the Taoist religions, philosophies, that the sage does nothing and still everything is fine. Everything works perfectly. So I really wish they would have kept that scene. They maybe could have cut some other ones, but that one should have stayed.
So we'll get into the whole Force discussion scene with Rey shortly. But I don't want to move too far ahead on Rey without talking about your boy Kylo Ren. So I love that they really amp up the rivalry between him and Hux.
Yes.
Kind of, they're like siblings kind of vying for Snoke's favor early on. I thought that was great. And of course, again, furthering the deconstruction of the franchise, he gets all pissed off because he gets chewed out by Snoke as being a child in a mask. He's like, oh, you're never going to live up to Vader. And then...
yeah, like killing his father wasn't enough.
Apparently not. Apparently not. That's why he literally goes and almost kills his mother, too. And I feel like this is to me the film in which Kylo Ren is really, I don't know if this is a word, but iconicized. Like this is the one where Kylo Ren feels like he's an icon on the level of Vader. Like I loved him in The Force Awakens, but in this one you really get more into his head. You really understand even more where he's coming from. You see his struggle between trying to be Vader or trying to forge his own path, between letting the past die or finishing what Vader started, like he says in The Force Awakens. He's also, and this kind of goes to your spiritual thing, he's also a perfect balance for Rey in that he has both light and dark in him, just like she does. So it's the kind of the yin-yang symbol, sort of thing.
Which is on the reflecting pool.
Is it really?
Yeah, well, it's not a yin-yang, but it looks like it. Yes, it's when they go up to the top of the mountain and he has her sit on the stone, there's a reflecting pool there, and it's very much black and white. It's got a Buddha on it. Half of it's black, half of it's white. It's not a Buddha. It's supposed to be a Jedi, but it's a Buddha. And so, yes, it's got that balance of the darkness and the light. And one of the Buddhist sayings is that if you meet the Buddha on the road, you kill him. And there's also talk about killing your mother and your father. And so it's very metaphorical for me because enlightenment is about removing social conditionings and the labels that your identity you place on yourself. And that happens through your conditioning, mostly through your mother and your father. So when they're saying kill your parents, let your past die, kill it if you have to, that's about achieving non-attachment, Buddhist non-attachment, and so that you can achieve enlightenment, which is really, to me, what the whole Force is about, is not being the black or the white part of the yin-yang, but being the full circle of it and having both of those aspects to yourself. And I feel like that it's more of a expansion in opposite. It's not a pendulum that's swinging from one to the other, but it's expansion into both of them. And the greater potential that you have for good is your greater potential for bad. And it's really about keeping that balance, maintaining that balance. And I love the reflecting pool. I don't know if you noticed it at all.
I may not have, not this viewing at least.
But you got to check it again. You got to check it again because it's right there.
I mean, to be honest, I'll probably rewatch this again before I see The Rise of Skywalker.
I own it. I couldn't find the disc though, so thank you Netflix.
Yeah, right.
For having it available. But that's where I really connect with the movie. Is that it's about this spiritual journey and the movement towards self-awareness, self-awakening, and not having everything be a dualistic nature. That it's not a fight between good and evil. It is in a way, but that's where you achieve the balance, is that you don't fight. You step back and you do nothing. And so that's why I just love this movie, because that's what it talks about. That's where you're trying, and you're seeing Luke trying to attain it after he's kind of, the pendulum has swung for him, and you see Rey trying to learn it, and you see Kylo dealing with it. And so it's all about human struggle for me, and it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Period. We're done. End of podcast.
Wait, we have the other half of the movie.
I'm just kidding.
Well, that's actually been one of my ongoing things that I feel like The Rise of Skywalker needs to address, is what is balance of the Force? Like, what does that even mean? And I think that's kind of the conclusion that I've come to. Apparently, there's a concept in the expanded universe. You know, I haven't read many of the books or comics or whatever, but apparently there's a concept called the Gray Jedi that is basically what you're talking about. And I think that it does appear to me, and this is kind of my conclusion as well, that it is more of what you're saying, embracing the whole.
Yes.
And I think we're really seeing that in this trilogy, with Kylo Ren being the dark that has some light in him, and Rey being the light that has some dark in her. And I mean, the whole saga has really, if you think about it, built to this conclusion, because in the original trilogy, there's hundreds or thousands of Jedi, and there's 2 Sith Lords. And then by the end of the prequels, not the original, the prequels, and by the end of the prequels, there's 2 Jedi and 2 Sith. And then, it's not the fact that the Jedi are in power, the Sith are in power, there's this number of this and this number of this. It's the fact that it just keeps flip-flopping. The balance has kept flip-flopping to light and dark, light and dark, light and dark. All the Sith being dead and there being 2 Jedi or whatever, that's not balance either. It's like...
Right, because the balance has to be internal. It has to be, you have to be one with it within yourself.
Exactly.
So if you have, yes, darkness rises and light to meet it. I mean, that's where, as a macrocosm, you have to see it as, okay, if you have one person who's evil, quote unquote evil, then you have to have the balance to it.
Right.
But if you have the balance internally, then we don't necessarily have that problem. Maybe we can stop the wars, and we can stop a rebellion against a First Order, and we can have true peace, because there is balance. But that balance has to start within first. And that's where I feel like The Last Jedi comes in, is that this what it's saying, that's its message, is that you have to journey within first and reconcile these parts of yourself within, so that when you do go without and you take action in the world, that it is balanced and it is peaceful. And you don't have to fight. It's not a conflict, because in reality, you're not either one of them. You're stepping back and you're actually the whole, the fullness of the entire yin yang, or if you want to talk about the reflecting pool, you're the entirety of that reflecting pool. So, it's a great movie.
And the galaxy has been just in constant struggle. I mean, at least in the canon of these movies, since Episode 1, it's just been war after war. There's the Clone Wars. This is a galactic civil war. It's just been constant struggle within that on a galactic scale. So it's really that internal struggle that you're talking about. blown up on like the most macro scale possible. And if you
Exactly.
think about it, Anakin's fall was because the Jedi were all up their own ass about, well, this is how it is. No attachment. Attachment is forbidden. Possession is forbidden. Blah, 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 blah. Because they felt like this is the way to do it. This is the only way, you know, all this strict rule structure and all
Right.
that.
Dogma.
Meanwhile, the Sith are complete opposite. The chaos. We keep
Totally.
killing each other. And it's like, can we find a happy medium between those two extremes? Because otherwise, this cycle is going to keep continuing over and over.
Exactly.
And for this to be the end of the Skywalker saga, it feels to me like that's the end point that this story needs to get to wrap up that conflict for the franchise and then grow beyond it.
Right. So it's not even really just about Rey or about Luke or about any one of them in particular.
Right.
It's about all of them. And that's another great part of this film is that we find out that, no, you don't necessarily need midichlorians or whatever to be a Jedi. We all are connected to the Force. It surrounds us and binds us together. So, and we all have to deal with this good and dark within ourselves. And so I'm really excited to see what The Rise of Skywalker is going to say and teach us.
So we get some, because we're about to get to that, I just want to, so we get some porgs. What are your thoughts on the porgs for a light interlude here before we get to more Force stuff?
I love Chewbacca's interaction with them. He just can't handle them, but he can't eat them. And
When you have to imagine that's like that porg's like little buddy or his mate or his brother or something that Chewbacca's
And
about
he
to like
makes
take a bite
sad
out of.
face. It's so cute.
I think that this movie also has a really good, again, I keep saying the word, but a really good balance of history in the franchise rather than, hey, remember this chessboard from the other one? Like The Force Awakens. It's like,
Right,
remember this
right.
little like training module
Yeah.
thing that Luke, like...
Like
And-
easy callbacks.
there was a
lazy
lot of
lazy
them in
callbacks.
Force Awakens.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, to the point that people consider that a negative to the film. I'm like, yeah, kind of.
Oh,
I
they
mean,
wanna
I'll
complain
concede
about everything.
about that one. I'm like, yeah, maybe there was a little too much of that in the last one. But this one, when they do pull out the callbacks, they are really impactful. Luke stepping onto the Falcon, R2 and Luke's reunion, and then the shirt that you're having with Leia's hologram, it just really, not only in the context of the movie, Luke seeing his sister for the first time in a long time, with the eyes that he saw her when they were both, 20 or whatever, before he even knew who she was, and the adventure that he's been swept up in since then, but also the movie coming out after Carrie Fisher passed away, and kind of remembered where that character started and all that. That was to me a really powerful moment, and it kind of, this is one of those movies, sort of like Avengers Endgame, where I get emotional at multiple points.
Yeah.
If I hadn't been taking notes, I probably would have gotten emotional even more so. But I really love that moment, and I wanted to make sure that we called that out.
Oh, definitely. Because he doesn't train Rey without it.
Right, exactly.
Like, that's what we need to push him forward.
That was a cheap move. It's fitting that R2 would be the one to snap him back because of that. So he gives her 3 lessons. The first of which I want to talk about. We'll get to Reylo in a second, but the first of which is that scene that you were talking about, where that we were almost mentioned already, where he's saying, "Do you know what the Force is?" She's like, "Yeah, it's how power you have that you can
It's
control
lifting rocks.
control people and lifts things." And she's like, "Yeah, no." And that's that I think is also a real clarification that she doesn't know the Force. She can do stuff. She doesn't know how she can do it.
Right.
But she has like a natural untapped ability with the Force. Her fighting skills and her survival skills are because she lived on her own on Jakku for a couple decades. So it's just she's been able to fight with her staff, which if you look at her, the way she fights with a lightsaber is very similar because she's adjusting her weapon of choice. But yeah, she doesn't really understand the Force. She's not like she comes up like, oh, the Force is this. Like she hasn't learned anything.
And he's like tickling her with the palm frond or whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, I feel it. Yes, that part is so funny.
That was great. Mark
Reach
Hamill
out
in this
with your
movie.
feelings.
Mark Hamill in this movie is amazing. I think this is by far, by again a significant margin, the best performance he's done as Luke Skywalker. I think he actually has material to work with, as opposed to, but I was gonna go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters, like he was in A New Hope. But
Yeah, his acting skills have definitely improved.
yeah,
in this movie.
I like cynical, jaded.
I love
Luke
him.
Skywalker.
I love him.
Yeah, I think it's a much more interesting version of the character.
He's a
frankly,
reluctant teacher.
Yeah, exactly. So he's teaching her about the Force and talking about, she puts her hand on the
That
on
is
the
such
rock.
a great sequence.
I know you wrote
They
notes
show-
about it, so maybe
yeah.
you want to talk about that.
She says he tells her to. First of all, she's doing meditation, which is Buddhist.
Right.
Again, here we go. He tells her to breathe and reach out with her feelings, and he says, "What do you see?" She says, "The island, life, death, and decay." And I love how it just intercuts to every different shot of these things happening all in this one place.
The porg's in their nest protecting
my
its young, then later it being
That
destroyed
was
by the
really my
waves.
favorite part of the movie. Like, if you want to talk about getting emotional, like that part
Yeah,
was really where it
agreed.
was for me. She says, "The island, life, death, and decay that feeds new life, warmth, cold, peace, violence, and between it all, balance, energy, a force." And he says, "Inside you." She
I'm getting
says,
chills right now
"Inside
talking to you.
me, that same force." And he says, "That force does not belong to the Jedi." Boom. That's what it's all about. I'm underlining my note. Why? I don't know.
Balance of the Force. It's all about balance of the Force.
But he's trying to teach her that it doesn't belong to the Jedi, and that's what we're having to learn. And we find out in the end, we get to the little boy from Canto Bight. We still haven't talked about that, but
No, we'll get there.
that is my absolute favorite part of the film because we're learning something, I feel, that's not even just about Star Wars. It's about life for real.
Right.
And so that's why this movie is just so beautiful, so eloquent in what it's telling you. And if you didn't get that, and if you weren't moved by that, then you got to open up your heart chakra or something. I don't know. Something needs to happen because that is where it's at. And that was like the quintessential moment of the movie that I really just was like, yeah, you just want to, it just, okay, I'm speechless.
It's great. It's amazing. I love that scene. I mean, I posted it on my personal Facebook as I was watching this. Be like, this scene, guys. It's the best interpretation or description of the Force. No, probably in the saga, but it's definitely since Yoda was like, the Force, it binds us.
Yeah, I went back
penetrates
and
us.
watched that
Between
after
me
you.
and you, the rock, the ship, blah, 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 that whole thing.
Yes.
Which I get similar chills with Yoda. Anytime we'll get to Yoda in a second. Anytime Yoda talks about the Force, I'm like, this is amazing.
Exactly. It's magical. It's mystical.
It is.
That's what Star Wars, that's where I love Star Wars.
Right.
That's what I love about Star Wars. I mean, all the cute aliens and stuff. I mean, yeah, they're cute, but the fact that we're talking about spirituality, whether you want to admit it or not, that's what we're talking about. And that it's coming through in this sci-fi movie that was really kind of hokey at the beginning, with A New Hope. It just seemed kind of kooky and kind of weird, and like it didn't really.
I mean, Lucas was inspired by like the old like Flash Gordon serials and things like that. So it was more like like a swashbuckly adventure kind of thing. He didn't really delve deep into a lot of this stuff until I guess Empire is when that started.
I feel like he had to know what he was doing a little bit.
Somewhat he did, but I mean, he didn't. Not to the level of spirituality that this movie gets into, or that Empire touches on as well. But yeah, that's the epic struggle of good and evil, both within and without. I think is the most fascinating aspect of this. Not the space battles or things like that, and that's why I've always been more drawn to the Jedi and the Sith. Like that's the manifestation of that theme, not the rebels. And that's why, like I was saying earlier, this is like one of the only times that I actually care about the actual rebels instead of like, okay, we'll get to the other stuff, get to the Rey and Kylo, like the more interesting characters. That I was actually more bought into it, and why that was felt like such a change of pace for me, because normally I'm drawn more to the kind of thing that you're talking about.
And you were talking about the callbacks to the other movies, and I love that she's talking about lifting rocks, and then we go back to the Empire, and he's talking about lifting rocks, and then at the end of the movie, she's lifting rocks. So those are the great little Easter eggs, I feel,
right,
in the movie. But yeah.
And then with lesson 2, she gets a history lesson basically about how shitty the Jedi Order is.
The legacy of the Jedi is failure, hubris, hypocrisy, and I wrote ego, which he didn't say ego, but that's what I...
Hubris is like, in the neighborhood. But that's also, I think, a huge element that this film is trying to tie together both of the preceding trilogies, that he straight up name checks Darth Sidious. We've never heard Luke Skywalker talk about Darth Sidious before. Like, he met him, and obviously in Return of the Jedi, but he mentions Darth Sidious. He mentions the event, basically, of Revenge of the Sith, and how they were so blinded by, like, Mace Windu says in episode 1, episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Mace Windu's like, I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing. Like, they're like, no, we would have seen that if some shady things was happening. Exactly.
Ego, hubris.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's what Luke is talking about. They were so, like, high and mighty that they were completely blind to the fact that the Sith were taking over the galaxy, and they were just, I'm sure this is fine. Don't worry about it. The dark side clouds everything, I guess. And that Luke was afflicted by it himself, and that's why he thought, I could tap into that mighty Skywalker blood. He had that same hubris.
And that's essentially throwing the balance off. When you're moving too far into your ego and thinking that you know everything, and that you've got it all figured out. That's another part of it that can throw the balance off, because you still have to approach life as a happy student and learn with each experience. So he thought, he he's Master Skywalker now, and he's got it, and he knows what to do, and it backfires on him. Yeah. And I love what Yoda talks to him about. I don't know if you want to go to that yet, but
I mean, we can go to that.
Well, he says that he failed as a teacher, and Yoda says, you heeded not what I was trying to show you, which was to pass on what you have learned: strength, mastery, but weakness, folly, failure. The greatest teacher failure is. So it's absolutely necessary as part of the journey. We can't just keep winning all the time. Otherwise, you develop that hubris, you develop that arrogance. So the Force has to knock you back down, to maintain that balance. So
speaking of moments in this movie that make me emotional, when Yoda shows up
in
theaters, I was like, ah! And I didn't really. I mean, I'm sure there were people online talking about, but I didn't know any spoilers for this one. I don't think.
I tried not to.
Because I ruined the end of Force Awakens for myself. Like 2 days before I saw it, they were like, he's Han and Leia's kid, and he kills Han. I'm like, shut up, stupid. I'm pushing away, repress. So with this movie, I don't really think I read too much of it. I think I was still reading some of the fan theories, but I don't think I knew about the Yoda thing. And I've been avoiding mostly anything of Rise of Skywalker right now, because I don't want to ruin that for myself. But when Yoda showed up, the chills again. Anytime Yoda says anything, I get like that. But especially when he's talking about the Force, when he's talking about the kinds of things that you mentioned, the lessons, when he teaches him that, and he says, we are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters. I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome.
Yes.
And apparently Force ghosts can summon lightning, which is a new thing too.
See, we're learning new things about the Jedi and what they can do. But I wanted to touch on that. When you delve into the theories before you watch the movie, then you have expectations of things. And that's why you get so disappointed.
That's why I see a headline about new fan theory for episode 9. I'm like, nope,
don't have a theory about it. Don't do that to yourself, because then it's not going to meet your expectation, and you're going to say, it sucks, and you're going to ruin the movie for yourself. Don't do it.
I love that Luke is going to burn the tree of knowledge, or whatever that is, to burn the books.
Well, that's another call to Buddhism, is that the Buddha first achieved enlightenment underneath a tree, the Bodhi tree. So I love the fact that all this wisdom and knowledge is inside a tree, which it's also interesting that it kind of seems like it's almost a dead tree and it's hollowed out, and it's kind of really not. It's 1,000 years later, and the death of the Jedi is imminent, and so let's just burn it down. Because she already possesses what she needs, which is actually the books, but...
Right.
So were you going to explain it? Or?
I was going to say Yoda basically kind of punks Luke a little bit. Luke's going to go burn the books, and then Yoda kind of stops him, and then
so he
summons
decides
the lightning.
Not to, yeah.
And then it's like... Luke's like freaking... Oh, I love that.
He's
I love
like
the
slapping his knee.
little trickster Yoda is amazing. But yeah, it's because she already has the books, and then she, it's not really even necessarily about holding. And this is the thing, Luke is clinging to the past. It's funny because there's all these pairs of characters. Luke is clinging to the past. Kylo Ren is like, we're gonna burn this shit down. He's darkness with light within him. Rey is light with darkness with her. So there's all these like. Again, balance between all the different conflicts throughout the movie.
It's muddy.
I love that. There's a moral complexity in this one that is not in any Star Wars movies, and I think that's another thing that maybe threw some people off. They're like, wait, what's going on?
They don't know what to think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it's forcing you to think and make your own decisions.
It's more challenging a Star Wars movie than we've ever gotten.
Sorry you had to think critically, people.
It's not like that. It's not that pure comfort escapism.
Right.
That the other 7 movies previously are a little bit.
And
that's not to knock
we got to advance at some point,
Exactly. Agreed. They're trying to drive it towards a conclusion now with 9. So yeah, that pretty much kind of ties up the Luke stuff for now. So now we need to get to Reylo.
Oh yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Bow chicka bow wow.
So I like that they. Are you Team Reylo?
So much. I so want them
Wow.
to get together. Like, I don't exactly know why, but I do. And yeah, everyone's he's an abusive boyfriend. But
well, he does. There is some. We'll get to that.
Well, when he says that her parents are nothing, she already knows that.
Right.
She says it herself.
Part. It's not that part. It's after he says that. He's like, "Oh, you don't have a place in the story. You're nothing, but not to me." I'm like, "Oh, snap." That's like negging 101.
True.
It's like, I mean, he's got to grow past that. I don't know. I feel very conflicted about Reylo. I mean, but there is definitely, whether they end up together or not, there's some tension during those, whatever. I heard somebody refer
My
to
note
them
has finger touch in all caps, underlined with an exclamation point. The sexiest scene in Star Wars is just 2 hands touching.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, there is.
It's probably my second favorite scene.
I heard somebody refer to those conversations as like kind of riffing on FaceTime, so they're calling it Force Time.
Oh,
so
that's
I really
cute.
like that. So I don't even know where I heard that, probably a podcast or something. So I'm gonna steal that, I guess, for this purpose. But yeah, they have basically like 3, I think, Force Time conversations. One of them is broken up when she goes and has that little.
There's a first one.
Little vision.
Then there's the second one where she says, "You're a monster," and he's like, "Yes, I am."
And I wrote that down. I wrote that down. Weirdly hot that moment. It's like, yes, I am. In the sack. And you're like, damn, Kylo.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I mean,
who was uncomfortably turned on by this movie.
Google Reylo fan fiction, and you'll find all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm not gonna deny it. I've had some of my own fascinations, but we won't go into that in this podcast.
Well, you like Adam Driver in general.
Yeah, he's pretty hot.
Yeah,
he's pretty hot, but. The bad boy thing, come on, every girl loves a bad boy.
It doesn't get much badder boy than
killing your own father.
Lord. Yeah. You're like, but I can change him. I'm like, I don't know about that, Ray.
I don't know if she can change him. I don't think she wants to. She kind of leaves him in him in the lurch at the end. It seems.
Yeah.
And then she hugs Finn, and I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Let Finn be with Rose.
So I like the Force Time thing, the way that progresses, that even with that first conversation, he's like, you're not doing this. The effort would kill you. And they're already seeding Luke's sacrifice at the end from that first moment that you have that the force projection or whatever we want to call it. I thought that was really kind of elegant storytelling. That,
and the way they filmed it was so simple too.
Right, exactly.
Just a little eerie music and the back and forth. Yeah.
And then in the dialogue, he's like, "Can you see my surroundings? I can't see yours," or whatever.
And then she gets the shirtless shot, and she actually, why would you tell the man to put a shirt on? Stop. I was like, shut up.
She's like,
tell him that.
She's like, I can't be turned on right now. I'm supposed to hate you. But look at those pecs.
Right? That scene was really intense too. And she's crying. She's like, why did you kill your father?
Oh, yeah, I love that.
And that's really where I feel like it's metaphorical to Buddhism, because he's saying, let your past die. And he's saying, shed the layers of conditioning, social conditioning that have made you what you are, so that you can embrace what you truly are, which is, what I feel is the totality of the Force. And so you can't do that if you're still this orphan, you're still, and she's clinging to that. And of course, we haven't even talked about her dip in the pool and her face off with the mirror and everything else. So it's a great part of her character development, is overcoming this need to see her parents or to project a parent into Han Solo or into Luke or whatever. And so that's where I feel like, maybe he's doing a little bit of nagging, but I feel like he's also really teaching her something that she needs to learn so that she can move on to the next level.
But he also goes so far as to kill his own father, which that's his rationale. He's like, I had to, that was my weakness. And
right, I think he took it a little bit too literally.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and then when he got to his mother, he realized he couldn't do that, because that's, the mother is
maternal bond
the quintessential. I mean, you can't, if he would have killed his mom, then I would have been like, oh, he's not sexy anymore.
He's irredeemable.
Exactly.
So... Yeah, because that's his whole thing, is that you need to let them go, because you've been in the first movie. She's like, she turns down a job with Han Solo because she's like, I got to get back and wait for my parents who are never showing up. Right. She's living on the hope that something that she knows isn't going to happen deep down.
And that's why it's great that her parents are nobody. And when she does actually go to this mirror and says, I want to see my parents, she can't, because it's not what she's supposed to be learning.
It's not relevant even.
Right.
At this point.
She's supposed to be her own self.
I really hope
unto herself.
I really hope that they don't somehow retcon that somehow and be like, well, your parents were nobody, but your grandfather was Obi-Wan Kenobi or something like that. Which I worry that JJ might flip it back around a little.
To maybe try to pacify the
right. I mean, in a way that would almost kind of work, because she hasn't been clinging to her grandparents. She's been she could still have that line somehow. Mm-hmm. But I kind of like the idea of her not being related to any of this in a way. So we'll see. I'm a little worried that, having JJ do 7 and then Rian Johnson do 8 and basically literally like smash the Kylo Ren helmet from 7 and like chuck the lightsabers, like subverting everything that 7 set up.
Yeah, he didn't use any of his scripts either, right? Abrams wrote the scripts for 8 and 9, and
I don't know if Abrams wrote it, but Lucas had notes for 7, 8, 9, and they were like, yeah, we don't want that. But from what I read, it wouldn't have been that great. But having JJ do 7 and 9, I'm worried that he's going to go back to what he was intending with 7 and kind of overlook something in 8.
Yeah.
So he said he's not really going to do that, but I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to tie this trilogy together, considering that the middle chapter and the most substantive thus far is the only one not being directed by J.J. Abrams. But that's something we won't know until December. So
don't ruin it, JJ.
yeah. Come on, JJ. We have faith in you. So we get Luke and Kylo. That story, I think, is very Rashomon-esque in that we get the stories told from different perspectives.
Yes.
And we get Luke's version where Kylo turned on him completely unprovoked. Mm-hmm. We get Kylo's version where Luke was about to kill him, and then Kylo just defended himself. And
Yes.
then you get the truth, which is
Right.
which I love that because that's always what they say. There's always
your
two sides.
truth.
Your truth, my truth, and your story, his story, and then the truth is always the third one. And
that's when you're really getting onto something with your spiritual journey is stepping outside of yourself and your identity and the ego that you've created so that you can learn real truths about the universe, or in this case, the Force. And you have to do it. I mean, the way is very narrow to get to it. So, yes, I love that part. That Luke was maybe kind of making it seem like he was doing the right thing a little bit more than he was.
Yeah, so we get the three versions, and ultimately it is.
And would he have even admitted it if she hadn't, pushed him into it and had that nice little battle with him about it? That was great too.
Yeah, the little mini fight with them outside, and then
she tries to hand him the saber, and she's like, "Are you gonna do it?" And he's like, "No."
Well, then I guess I'm going to Ben Solo.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna go meet up with my man.
That's another one of the Empire parallels that she's in the middle of training and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go and follow my heart," which is what Luke does in Empire, to go and save Han and Leia. And we get that little battle with them outside with the staffs, and she straight up pulls a lightsaber on him, which is. Again, that little bit of dark that she's got, that she's willing to go that extra step, which I think works. Sometimes you have to get your hands slightly dirty in order to get things done, I guess. And that's her.
The complaint was like,
it.
"Oh, he's Master Skywalker. Like he could have kicked her ass. Like
he's not trying to kill her,
right? So what was he gonna do?
Right. So ultimately, they were both the versions of the story were kind of true. It was kind of the third. They were both correct. Which I love that. So then she goes off and heads to the First Order, and she meets with her future boyfriend. We get kind of shades of Return of the Jedi, where he's going to the throne room with her.
She's like, "I'll help you."
Well, he meets her with cuffs, but still, maybe she's into that. He doesn't know. So I love the Snoke. Not only the production design, that red room is awesome.
Yeah.
What amazing.
What are those guys called? The red guys?
The Praetorian Guards,
That's what I thought, yeah.
So we find out that Snoke was manipulating both of them, kind of playing both sides to get them to, Kylo thought that Rey was going to turn, Rey thought Kylo was going to turn, and Snoke's like, "Yeah, you both come here, and then I'll have my way with you." Sounds awkward now.
Right?
That's not where I was going with that.
But he kind of does. I mean,
that
whole thing where he's puts her up in the air, and that was a little uncomfortable for me.
I like that Snoke is actually interesting in this movie a little bit. He's kind of, and that's the other thing. People are pissed off that they killed Snoke. I'm like, who cares about this dude? You really want just another Emperor guy that's just
I can't remember the actor's name, but of
Andy
course,
Serkis.
Andy Serkis. Oh, he's amazing.
And the visuals, the design of him is much stronger in this time because we actually see him in the flesh in this movie. In The Force Awakens, he's just on holograms.
Yeah.
And the level of detail that they're able to do with the motion capture is amazing. I thought he was really, really an impressive design and impressive visuals that they were able to pull that off. And not only that, I also really, really love that Rey keeps fighting and he keeps diffusing her. Like she goes for her lightsaber, it flies around, hits her in the head, and back to his thing. She goes for Kylo's saber for 2 seconds, and then he stops her. But then he thinks he knows Kylo Ren so clearly that. And if you notice, Kylo is turning the saber. He's turning his red saber as the blue. So he's synchronizing it perfectly. So Snoke can sense that a saber is turning, but
against
thinks it's
his one true enemy.
Right.
Yes.
He can sense the truth of Kylo's emotion and what he's actually doing, but he's doing them both simultaneously to throw him off. And I thought that was really.
That was a great scene.
It was a really smart way to do it. And that is such a cheer moment when the saber comes flying and Snoke gets bisected. That was such a woo! And the music comes in.
And then they fight the other bad guys together, back to back.
That's right.
It's kind of hot again. But then when they actually get rid of all the Praetorians, that's when it goes awry.
It goes south. Again. Negging takes place, as we said. But I also I love that battle is that moment, the Snoke death moment, and the battle, easily
Amazing.
probably the at least visually the highlight of the movie for me.
Yes.
Because we're seeing them both fight, because there's this tentative kind of alliance between the two of them, because it upends expectations that you don't get Snoke as like the Emperor again, like in the third movie. Once that happens, you don't know what's going to happen in the third movie, because you assume that would have been the third movie, like this whole throne room thing.
Isn't there some thought that maybe Palpatine's gonna come back or something?
He's on a poster. and
Oh,
everything.
he's on the
At the end of the
poster.
trailer, you hear his laugh. The
No
first
one's
trailer.
ever really gone, and then he's laughing. And,
Right.
So we're just gonna replace one big boss with another. I mean,
if it lends that sort of if it satisfies the through line through all 9 movies by having Palpatine come back, then I might be okay with it. I'm very curious about how they're going to do that.
but don't set expectations for the movie, people.
Right.
You're gonna
Which is
be
why
disappointed.
I didn't even.
Yeah.
I think there might have even been a second trailer or at least a TV spot or something. I'm like, nope, no more. I'm good. I
Oh,
saw
you
that
should.
one.
You haven't seen it?
No, I
You've
haven't.
just seen the one where she's in the desert and she's
The jump and the slow motion.
So you haven't seen the second.
I haven't seen anything second. Dude. I don't know if I want to see anything else.
Dude, oh my gosh, I watched that last night. I was
Really?
having full body chills.
Oh,
I was
boy.
crying. The
I
music
don't
is
know.
amazing.
I don't know if I should. Should I? Did I give
Oh,
anything away?
I think you should, but
I'm trying. I told you I'm trying to hold back.
I know, but it's really ooh.
Oh boy. That sounds like it's
Yes.
Reylo. Is it Reylo related, the ooh?
There's some of that in there, yeah, in her development, and then I don't want to tell you too much if you don't
Okay.
want to know, but I suggest you watch it. If you're
is it a
having
full
withdrawals,
trailer? Is it a full trailer or is it just a TV spot?
it's
a full trailer.
No, it's like a full trailer.
Oh, man.
It's way more involved than the other one that they gave us.
Right.
So yeah, I would say if you're having withdrawals between now and December, and you really need to get
You might hit.
yeah, you need a fix.
After this recording, I have no more Star Wars podcasts
Oh,
until Rise of
gosh.
Skywalker. So after I see it, so I might need
You
to
might
do that.
need to see it.
I might need to watch this a couple more times.
You might need to see it, and then maybe you can record a little something on it.
There you go.
For a little teaser for everybody.
Or something.
Yeah, because it's awesome. I watched it last night.
Man. All right, maybe
Ooh.
I need to watch that after this. And even in the battle, you see the differences in their fighting styles. Rey is much more passionate, and she's like straight up like roaring in the fight with the Praetorian guards.
Yeah.
And Kylo's much more focused and graceful because he has Jedi training, and she's just like, all right, this is how this works. I guess you swing it around
Like
my staff."
Amazon warrior princess.
Basically,
Yeah,
basically.
I love the part where she throws him the lightsaber and he just turns it on in the guy's face. Oh, that part was so good.
Great teamwork.
Good times. Good
Nice,
times.
nice assist, Rey.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
So then the time to let old things die, that heartbreaking moment where she's like, all right, we're on the same team now, right? He's like, no.
Well, he's trying to
He's trying to
recruit
pull her. I know.
He
There's
even
a-
says please. I mean, he
I
even asked
know.
nicely,
He
you know?
did.
I mean, come on. Can you imagine if the two of them were together, like how powerful they would
Unstoppable.
be? Oh, this.
But that's also the Sith move. It's like Vader is like, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
Yes, true.
Anakin with Padme, we can rule I can overthrow him. We can make things the way we want them to be. Him, Anakin and Padme, it's like,
But
yeah,
maybe that's what the Force needs is two rulers to balance each other out.
maybe. But he wants to let all the rebels die too, so I don't know.
It's only 400 of them.
Wow. So your alliance is clear. But yeah, so then that happens. The saber gets ripped apart.
Yes.
And then the Holdo maneuver takes place, I think, pretty much right
Yes.
there.
Oh, gosh.
That's what I'm saying. The Holdo maneuver is like the end of all 3 of these subplots and like the perfect bridge into the finale. That's why I was like, well, that's an easy way to break it up. And when Hux shows up, he's like pretty much ready to kill Kylo Ren.
yeah.
He's like, hells yeah, I'm
That
gonna
was
take this over.
sneaky.
And then
Sneaky.
it was. And then Kylo Ren goes full on Vader style, choking out Hux and assuming leadership. And it's like, all right, well, now he's supreme leader of Ren, I guess. So I like that moment. And it feels like this is, like I said, this is the movie where Kylo Ren really becomes an iconic screen villain,
Yes.
even more so than he was. Like, I love him in Force Awakens, but in this movie, you're like, now he's in charge of shit.
Yeah.
He does lots of things we don't expect. He's much more complex than he was in Force Awakens.
It was really shocking when he killed his dad, though.
It was.
But this is where it feels like he really makes the decision to. He didn't kill his mom, but he still is really embracing that dark side. Oh, he's so hot.
That sexy dark side. So now we're moving on to Finn.
Yes.
So Finn is obsessed with finding Rey, with taking care of Rey, making sure she's safe. And I mean, I guess The Force Awakens, if you think about it in The Force Awakens, pretty much all his motivation is like, I don't really know how to turn this thing off. I'm just here to get Rey. Like he says to Han on, I'm blanking, on the Starkiller base, I guess. And this is really the movie where they touch on how much growth he has. That he doesn't really have any interest apart from Rey in the cause. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I like that Rose is basically a Star Wars fangirl. She's like, you're Finn. You're the Finn from Force Awakens. I saw it a couple years ago, and now I'm standing next to you. This is crazy.
She still tases the shit out of him, too.
She does. She does. She's a badass. I loved Kelly Marie Tran in this, and it's very, it's very unfortunate that people were so shitty to her online, and she's closed her Instagram account. I think she's like off social media because she was being harassed and stuff. And that's terrible. I really like her character. I think she's just the right balance of wholesome and fierce, I guess. Yeah. And it's also a type of character we've never really seen before. She's with the Resistance, but she's not a soldier. She's like works on the machines in the back. She
just lost her sister too,
right?
Man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a perspective that we haven't seen, in the Star Wars saga to date. In the way that Finn was kind of a stormtrooper that turned against the First Order. And I like that they're not just giving us, well, here's another Resistance fighter, here's another Jedi or Sith. Right. It's like we're seeing a grander scope of individuals caught up in this conflict. And
the message is that nobodies can be somebodies.
Right.
And they can be heroes.
Yeah, we're really uncovering all the major themes in this movie. Yes. I love it.
That's what we're here to do.
It's true.
Gentle listeners.
Rose and Finn, I think they have really great chemistry, but I don't know if it's necessarily romantic yet. I mean, we'll have to see what happens in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, the kiss was kind of
he's like, what the hell?
Anticlimactic.
Yeah, he's like, I'm still kind of into Rey, so I don't know how I feel about that.
And then at the very end, like, he's comforting her. Rey's looking at that, like, what's going on over there?
Yeah, what's up?
What happened to my man?
I don't think she didn't have feelings for Finn, though. I think it was more like, hey, I thought I had like somebody on the hook here. I thought I had you on hold here. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to see what's happening with Kylo Ren. If that doesn't work out, then I got my backup lined up here. Because, he clearly adores her, which, I don't blame her. I don't blame him. I adore her, too.
Yeah, she's great.
She's amazing in these movies. And that's the other thing I wrote down here too. You have Finn and Rose and Poe talking to Maz Kanata in that one scene, and I'm thinking to myself, I just love this new cast so much. All these characters are so cool, and all the actors seem like really, they're so talented, and they seem like really interesting people in real life and in the movie. So I really like all that. It feels like every aspect of Star Wars is really engaging now in this way,
making it deeper and richer, the tapestry of their universe. And why anybody would complain about that is beyond me. So speaking of people complaining, Canto Bight. Oh gosh, we needed that whole thing. Well, we needed to have that.
Why did we need that?
Because she has to give the ring, the resistance, the rebellion ring to this little boy, because I think that he's gonna be in this next movie for sure.
Maybe.
I think so. We have to see a new generation. We have to see what's going to continue to happen.
In a way, I kind of don't want that little boy to be in the next movie because it's more symbolic of they're inspiring other people.
Right.
I didn't really have, where is that? I had that in my notes somewhere. But to me, it felt like well, we'll get to it now, the broom kid at the end. It felt to me like the end of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It felt like...
That's what I was thinking last night when I was watching it.
It feels like there's all these potentials out there. And yes, exactly. And, everybody's kind of self-empowered.
You have to talk about my favorite TV show of all time, of course, Rob.
Of course. But that's what it reminds me.
Your audience.
That's the big takeaway at the end of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer is they do that spell and then they unlock all the Slayer abilities and all the potentials across the world. So Buffy is not the one and only.
Right.
They're breaking free of these rules. and they're opening up the possibility for all these other people to achieve their potential.
Yep.
And I think that's very much what The Last Jedi is trying to say at the end. Plus, it's also kind of meta, the fact that a Star Wars movie ends with a bunch of little kids playing with Star Wars figures, essentially.
Yes.
And I love that
meta
as well. There's so much of that in this movie. But yeah,
I'm so glad you brought up Buffy, because I thought the same thing last night, and I was like, yes, we're learning that anyone can be a hero,
I almost...
the Force binds us all, whether you're somebody or a nobody, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
I almost kind of don't want there to be another movie, because that's such a perfect ending.
It really
in
is.
a way.
It really is. But I need to see more.
I know. But it's at least
Kyrie, or what are they? Reylo. Whatever. I need it. I need it, folks.
So yeah, I agree with you. The Canto Bite, that obviously is set up for the end of the film, but also it complicates the morality again. Where look at all these cool rich people, and they're playing their games and they're having all their stuff, but look closer. Rose says, "These are the worst people in the galaxy. Look beyond the glitz and the glamour that's wowing Finn, and you'll see that all these people are profiting off of the death and destruction of." And then
we have that
planets.
scene with DJ showing him in the ship, like, oh yeah, this guy's making X-wings, but he's also making stuff for the good guys and the bad guys.
Exactly.
He's profiting from it, So
yeah,
it was necessary. I would have liked if they maybe would have cut down the chase scene with the Fathiers and put in that other lesson between Luke and Rey, but we can't win them all.
That did feel like probably the most prequel-y sequence in the movie, just because they're running over the casino. There's like the little alien, singing.
Yes,
and things like that.
We need that. We gotta have one of those lounge with the
exactly. Well, yeah, every movie,
kooky music.
Maz Kanata's place was in the last one.
Yes.
Exactly. And I love the John Williams score when they go into Canto Bite, and dun, 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 dun.
Exactly.
It was.
You feel like you're in a Star Wars movie again.
Pretty much.
So yeah, we definitely needed that.
That great tracking shot coming through the casino is amazing.
Yes, everyone's wearing black and white, and they're all all coiffed, and then they're just looking at Rose and Finn like, what the hell
are these people? You mentioned Justin Theroux has a cameo there.
Yes.
JGL has a voice cameo.
Yes.
And I think Mark Hamill also does the little guy putting coins in BB-8. He does the voice of him as well. But yeah, it's just kind of the most in a way disconnected part of the movie, but I think it brings a lot thematically, and yeah, it sets up that amazing ending. So it's also the shortest section by far that I had for this 3 subplots, because I think it does have the least amount of screen time. We mentioned about I like Rose's, her line, "the lousy beautiful town," is a little cheesy, but it's like, I'll forgive it. I like what she's trying to say, so I'll get past that. So Benicio del Toro as DJ. What are your thoughts about the stutter? Is a little much, I think.
Yeah, he was an interesting character. I could have taken or left him. It wasn't. And then he double crosses them in the end.
Bastard.
So, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of his.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't a big fan.
I think...
But they're also like, oh, if this guy's a master codebreaker and he could have gotten out of the cell, why didn't he do it in the first place? Because he wanted to have a place to sleep. And then these kids come in and start bothering him,
Exactly. He knows how to get out of there. He just wants to take a nap
Exactly.
first. Then he'll get out on his own time. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not sleeping around here.
Yeah. I do like how he gives her back her necklace.
That was cool.
That part was cool.
Best conductor. He's just basically there as a foil to push Finn to just finally stand for something, I think. So again, the balance, Finn is like, I don't know if I care about this stuff, and DJ's like, I don't either, and Finn's like, wait a minute, I don't want to be like you. I guess I need to choose a side here, because that's not cool. And just being opportunistic, and that makes me no better than the people at Canto Bite that are selling things to the good guys and the bad guys. But I love that whole thing that he says about, good guys, bad guys. It's all made up words. It's all a machine. Right. That whole thing. I love that message, because again, it makes you really think about this galaxy and how things actually work within it, and that. And
where do we maintain the balance?
Right.
Outside or inside?
Right.
Yeah.
And then with the Finn storyline, we also get, and honestly, this is probably one of the few aspects of this movie that is mildly disappointing for me as a sequel to Force Awakens. We get the return of Captain Phasma for like 2 minutes, which I liked. I thought that character had a lot of potential, mostly in just the design and like the history, the connection between her and Finn. So I would have liked to have seen that play out a little more thoroughly in this movie. Like maybe her be out for revenge or something. Like even if it was just set up and then she shows up in this moment. Do you care at all about Captain Phasma, first of all?
Yeah, I do. I like her character, and there's talk that she may not be dead.
Yeah,
like,
I hope she's not. I haven't seen anything about her showing up in The Rise of Skywalker, but I would like
she
her
took
to.
a nasty fall into some fire, so
That's true. But Darth Maul got cut in half and came back in like the expanded universe and then in Solo, so anything's possible in Star Wars. Like we established earlier, that physics is clearly not, physics, biology, clearly the sciences don't apply here.
Physics.
So I would have liked a little more with Captain Phasma, maybe even just setting up that battle to give it more stakes. And instead, the way it plays into in the film is she just shows up and you're like, oh yeah, she's a thing. I forgot. Like they didn't really build that up at all, which was a little disappointing considering that it's like then positioned as this epic showdown. Like, oh, let's go, Chrome Dome. It's like, I thought you forgot about her like we did. I mean, you've been so focused on Rey and everything else. But I like the way he smashes her helmet. You see her eye.
Yeah.
Of course, it's Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones.
She's awesome.
And then she says, "You were always scum," and he has the rebel scum,
scum,
which is a great line. So you get that really cool hero moment.
I think they also
Finn.
had alternate endings for her too.
I think there was.
Yeah.
I think there was an alternate version of that.
I think I liked the alternate version better, but I can't exactly remember what it was.
Alternate or like extended? I think there was more conversation with them or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been nice if they would have put that in.
I also like the running gag of every movie you think she's dead and she shows up again. That's why I'm like, I like her to show up one more time in the next one, even if it's briefly, and then get killed for real this time.
Yes.
Like a lightsaber through or something clear that you're not coming back from this.
Well, it'll be the last one anyway.
Exactly.
So she's not coming back regardless.
Yeah, we're not getting Phasma a Star Wars story or anything.
That would be interesting, though.
That would be, though. Yeah. I wonder,
how
we don't know what her story is at all.
Yeah.
There you go. Lucasfilm, you can have that idea. So, and then Finn and Rose show up on Crate. And that's brings us right into the finale.
Comes together.
They show up and they're like, "No, it's us." And thanks to BB-8 kind of liberating them on the ship, which then splits apart. That's why there's all the fire and stuff during the battle with Phasma because of the Holdo maneuver. So all that stuff, the Holdo basically drastically shifts everything, and pushes the story forward. I really like in the Battle of Crate the fact that the planet's surface is white.
Yes.
And it ends up being salt, so it's like a visual callback to Hoth.
Oh.
With the snow planet. And then it's also has that like gorgeous red imagery that is very,
great.
Of, blood, and it's very visceral, and then obviously gives us a tip off to whether or not Luke is actually even there.
Yes.
If you pay attention later on.
Yes, I noticed that when I was watching it last night. I'm like, oh, his footprints aren't causing any effect here.
It's almost like they thought this through and they
should have paid attention, Kylo.
Yeah, but Kylo's not paying attention to anything. He's just full on obsession mode at that point.
No, he got totally fooled.
He's thinking about the finger touch and thinking about taking down Luke. So what were you?
I want every weapon we have to fire on that man. And then the captain or one of the guys at the
General Hux.
General Hux, yes, he's like, "Do you think you got him?" or something like that. That's a funny line.
That's great. I love it. Oh, and then you're also seeing kind of the power struggle playing out because
yes,
Kylo's
slams
like
him against the wall.
Well, Kylo is like, "Oh, focus all focus all your firing here," and then Hux repeats it, and Kylo's like, "Dude, you're like backseat commanding now." And then slams him against. Don't let your personal feelings get in the way or whatever. And it's like slams him against the wall. And then the other guy's
like, "Right away, sir, right away.
don't hurt me." We've seen what you do to elevators, and then the last one, like computer, smashing you. He's got a temper problem.
He does have a little bit of a temper, doesn't he?
Yeah, a little bit is maybe being generous. So the rebels do their get ready for their last stand, and I think this is also some of the most beautiful photography in the saga too. The ships going out, dragging the old ships from this abandoned base that Poe like puts his foot right through, and he's like, oh, what the hell? They're all like rickety and shit, and they're dragging against the salt. And then you have the walkers showing up, and just like the way the sun like reflects off.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really, really great, really amazing imagery in these more recent movies.
Definitely.
It's just a million different shots that I all want to have on my desktop wallpaper on my MacBook. I love it. It's so cool. And yeah, so then Rey shows up with Chewie and a whole nest full of porgs.
Oh my gosh, they're so cute.
Which is such a real hero moment when they show up and she's like, woo! And Finn makes the comment like, oh, they hate that ship.
And there were people complaining like, oh, Chewbacca had nothing to do in this movie. It's like, yeah, except for come and rescue them at the end and with his flight sequence that he had.
Right. He's also the one that breaks into Luke's little cabin and gets his attention initially. He's like, Chewie? And he's like, where's Han? And I like that moment too as well.
Yeah, that was a sad moment.
But yeah, so it also, going back to what we're talking about hubris, it's also in this scene, it's really, that's the weapon that's kind of used against Kylo, because Luke knows how much he hates him, so he's like, we're going to use that. We're going to use his ego and his like obsession, his like vengeance against him, and we're going to focus all of the First Order on me so that they can slip out the back.
Yep.
And I love that plays into the theme that we've been talking about.
He just went and faced down the whole army with his laser sword.
He did.
Yeah.
It's also just it's a great like Star Wars epic kind of fun moment. The Millennium Falcon and the whole battle sequence.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
She's flying like through like the canyons and stuff. It's great. The music again. We mentioned John Williams a couple times, but so awesome.
You can't say enough wonderful things about him.
Right.
And his music.
Well, George Lucas has said that he kind of sees these movies as silent films in a way, and you can kind of mute it and just like watch it with them, not mute it, but take away the dialogue and the sound and just have the music over the images, and you could still follow everything just fine, just because that's how integral it is.
Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically in The Force Awakens, that moment when Rey catches the saber. I still get chills every time I watch it. In The Force Awakens, when the lightsaber is in the ground and the snow, and Kylo Ren's trying to get it, and it flies past him, and then Rey. It kind of reminds me of the Captain America thing with the Mjolnir in Endgame. Actually, it kind of goes like that. And then she catches it, and like the look of realization on her face, and she turns it on, and seeing
I'm one with the Force,
and seeing a female Jedi at that point too, and everything. It's like feels like something important was happening for the franchise in general. So that was really cool. So it's, this movie has a lot of moments like that, I think, where the music really comes to the forefront and sells a moment. Like we were saying about Rose's sister earlier. That whole sequence is like, the bulk of that sequence is silent. Hold a maneuver, literally no music even in that, just the image. So I guess we're kind of getting to the point about Finn and his suicide run. What are your thoughts on the ion cannon, and it's like basically his decision to sacrifice himself? It's kind of a half-baked decision, actually.
It was, and I didn't really see why they were out there in the first place, because it didn't really work. They still cracked open the door anyway, so it just seemed like they were unnecessarily putting themselves in harm's way.
Right.
But, I mean, it made for a great action sequence.
Yeah.
And then him, I don't know. It might have been good if he would have flown into it.
Did you think the first time you saw this movie, did you think he was going to die, or did you think that was a, I guess, satisfying conclusion to his arc?
I think it is. For him to have come from where he's come from, and that was a great stand for him to make. It was almost like anticlimactic when she shot him out of the way, and
even he's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
That was
I
like
had the
my
same
big shining
question.
moment.
Why would you do that? I get that it's speaking to like, let's not have that hubris and that hero moment, but
right.
Yeah, I think it maybe would have worked better if he had,
What about?
I'm okay with him dying. I don't,
It was a it would have been a worthy send off for the character, I think, for
definitely.
sure.
But he's probably has more to do in the next one, I think. So
Right. Well, Rose clearly is into him to some degree here. So how what did you think of her that's how we're gonna win, by not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love, which is a really sweet sentiment, but it's also like, wait,
it's kind
Finn?
of the
You
same
love him?
thing.
Huh? I don't understand. So I guess her idea is not fighting against something, but fighting for something, which is a
Right,
concept I can really
right.
get behind. But it does feel like the kiss moment, which it's such a movie moment. There's like a big explosion behind them, and then
Yeah.
they kiss. I'm like, okay, Rose, did you time that
It
just
felt
right, or
kind
what?
of devoid of passion, though. So that's where
I think
I
it's
was just
supposed to,
I
though.
didn't really connect with it.
I think, yeah, I feel like that's intentional,
I
because
feel like
that's
it's
what
like a
Finn's reaction
fangirl
was.
moment. She
Yeah.
like gets to kiss her hero on the cheek or something. It just didn't necessarily do anything for me. But
Right. No, it was no finger touching.
no,
No chemistry like Reylo.
it doesn't make sense. Finger touching is sexier than an actual kiss. But yeah,
It's true.
it didn't do it for me. I don't know. I would have liked to have seen him actually fly. That would have felt like redemption to me,
Mm-hmm.
like him coming through being a stormtrooper and
Sacrificing himself to fight the First
sacrificing
Order.
himself and to stick it to the man.
But then we wouldn't have gotten that reunion with him and Rey, where the rocks are falling, which is really sweet, because
I
that's
don't
like
want to see him with her. So I'm like, ugh.
not even not romantically, but like
Yeah, that was pretty
as
cool.
friends. Like, that's a great moment. And in a way, I kind of don't. One, I don't think they have that same kind of chemistry, and two, I don't think she feels that way about him.
Right.
And three, I like the idea of just having a platonic,
Right.
friendship
yeah.
between a man and a woman in these movies. I think that, they don't need to necessarily.
Well, I kind of think there was also a little bit of something when Poe introduced himself to her at
Right.
the end too. So
Me
I was
too.
like, wait, another guy?
It almost
how many
felt
dudes do you need?
Earlier when I was rewatching the movie the other day or yesterday, the passing of the Rey's beacon from Finn to Poe kind of felt like a passing of the torch. Like, all right, Poe, she can be yours now.
I didn't. Oh,
That's the way I kind of was like. It kind of feels like that's almost what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I definitely felt something when he
I mean,
introduced himself.
Oscar
to
Isaac's a
her.
good-looking man, so
He is.
I can understand.
Right? I can
But
too.
what a Poe versus-
You go, girl. There is no slut shaming here. You go, girl. Okay.
But he doesn't have the bad guy thing working out for him. The bad boy thing,
He's
like
he's
Kylo
got
Ren.
that
A little
cocky.
bit.
He's got
That's
the
true.
cocky,
Okay, maybe
arrogant.
he has the right. Maybe he has the right balance of
Yes.
of bad boy attitude without murdering his own father and
Yeah.
taking on destroying planets and stuff.
He's like a Kylo light.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Turn
yeah.
it down a little bit. 40% less dangerous or something.
Yeah, I think the Finn's so sweet that I think it would be nice to see him and Rose together. Like they're like a cutesy couple,
Yeah.
They just don't carry the weight and the verve of like a Reylo
Right.
or even a Poe Ray or Ray
Poe.
No, that doesn't sound good. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing somebody pair up with Poe because he's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was all that speculation in The Force Awakens that everybody was like shipping Finn and Poe because he's like, hey, is that my jacket?
Oh,
He's like, looks good on you or whatever.
Okay,
People are like, hey.
okay.
Because they have like a real bromance going
Yeah,
on in
they
that
do.
movie and in this one
I
too.
didn't see that at all, but I
Well,
can support that.
Fandom's gonna fandom.
Yeah,
It's gonna do its thing.
fandom,
so
gonna fandom.
pretty much. I did find it feel like a little bit of a missed opportunity when they send out Leia's distress signal and nobody responds. And now we know that Lando's gonna be in The Rise of Skywalker. So my question is, what up, Lando?
Yeah,
I hope that the next movie maybe explains like that why he was unable to respond because he's the character that would have been the one to.
well, he's
show
always
up
getting
there.
himself into trouble.
It's
so
true.
he
Maybe
might
he was
have
locked
been,
up.
He
I
might
was
have been
indisposed.
doing something.
Seeing Leia lose hope like that, and literally she's the one that's like the spark is out. I'm like, oh my god, this is depressing.
Yeah, but then her brother comes
I
like
know,
2 seconds
but
later, and
having Leia feel hopeless, we're not
Yeah.
used to that.
no,
Her whole thing is, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my
Right.
only hope. That's like her jam, is being full of hope. So having her feel hopeless was
Well, that just
such a
goes
downer.
along with all the surprises and turns that this film has made in comparison to the other ones. So
Yeah,
I get it. It didn't last for very long, so
that's true. Like 2 seconds later, Luke
Yeah.
shows up. Luke's like, no, we can't have that. Perk up,
Exactly.
Leia. You changed your hair, apparently. Oh. And then we get the no one's ever really gone thing, and
Yes.
he kisses her on the forehead. Another moment that I get emotional because
Yes.
of the movie, but also because of Carrie Fisher too.
she's gone.
Exactly. So I love that moment, and I think you know it would be nice. It would have been nice to get more with the two of them in this movie, but I think then that it would cheapen that the power of that reunion, the fact that we see them together
Yeah.
for the first time since Return of the Jedi, and
Well, I like the scene where he's on the rock and he calls to her and she connects with him.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that really made me feel good.
other side of the galaxy, and they're still
Yeah,
connected
yeah.
through the Force.
So
Yeah, I loved all that. And then even Leia's given up hope on Ben getting redeemed. I think that's
yeah, that part would make me even more sad that a mother doesn't have hope for her son than, for people not responding to her distress call.
right. Well, that's the big question going into the Rise of Skywalker is like, can this guy be redeemed? Should he be redeemed? And or
Does he even
live
know
through
that
the
she's
end?
alive at this point?
Yeah.
Like maybe he's going to be operating under the assumption that she's gone and having her come back, or there might be a surprise moment where she comes in and shifts his perspective. So
I don't know
that
how
would be
I don't know
cool.
how they're gonna work that because they're using just archive footage of her from the last two movies for Rise of Skywalker because she passed away, before
Yeah.
this came out, so they hadn't really done anything for Rise of Skywalker yet.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
they can work magic, so
So they have unused footage, and they're gonna just digitally kind of insert things together and make it happen. So I'm really curious to see how they're gonna tie off Leia's story arc with this last one, considering they have very limited resources to do so. I ultimately think it's a better option than recasting or, digitally recreating her or something like that. I mean,
I
that's-
figured they could work total magic and
That's
make
probably
her
what they'll do.
appear to
Well,
be there.
Then Furious 7, they did that whole thing with Paul Walker, and they made that movie feel pretty seamless, considering he died during production and everything. So
I haven't seen that one.
yeah, the
Yeah.
ending is great. The ending
Oh,
is the best
really?
moment. It's because they made like the whole ending is like a kind of a meta farewell to Paul Walker and stuff. So it was everybody cry. But now we're getting off topic.
Yes, we are.
So Luke, Luke, like I say, he plays on the hatred of Kylo's hatred for him. I love the dusting himself off moment after all the fire, like we mentioned. So
That
great.
was great.
It's one of my favorite gifts for this movie to use, especially when people are hating on it. I'm like, what's the best Star Wars movie? I'm like, Last Jedi.
And then the great line that he says at the end. You gonna say it?
You can say
Tell
it.
the people. She says, "Strike me down in anger, and I'll always be with you, just like your father." He says, "See you around, kid."
Well, he
I
also
thought that was
says
really
the every word of that sentence is wrong.
Oh
too.
yes,
Which is the callback from earlier with Rey.
Because he says he's gonna take down the resistance, and he's gonna kill Rey, and he's gonna kill this, and yada yada yada, and he's like,
After I kill you, I will have killed the Last Jedi. That whole thing. I'm like, no, not going to. Nice try. Yeah, I love all that. The way that's intercut too, with the Resistance making their escape.
yes,
And Rey opening it up, and her obviously being the next Jedi.
And then I like
and
when
the
Poe
lifting
says,
rocks, all
"Follow
that.
me," and they all look at Leia, and she's like, "What are you looking at me for? Follow
All the
him."
arcs are coming together.
Yes.
It's great. Great
She
moment.
she acquiesced, to give him some leadership there. So
Well, he's learned. He's realizes because he wants to. Finn is actually the one that's kind of vocalizing Poe's instinct, and we should go
Right.
out there. We should go fight. He needs help. Blah blah blah. Poe's like, wait a minute. This is for a reason. He's doing this
Yes.
so we could leave. We should peace out now
Let's
instead of just
take a
rushing into a
step
battle
back
without.
and-
Yeah. So he's
Exactly.
learning, and he paraphrases Holdo and says, he finally gets the picture about where the
yes, that
spark
was sweet.
that will burn the First Order down. I love that.
And then she's lifting rocks. That's another great part. we call back to the Empire, to the beginning of the movie, where she's talking about how the Forces let you control people and lift rocks. And then she's like, oh, I'm lifting rocks. Here we go.
Ironic that lifting rocks is exactly what I need to do in this moment.
Yes.
It's also, as much as I love the battle with Luke and Kylo Ren, and I do, it's also not telling, but it's interesting to note that this is the only Star Wars movie where we don't have two lightsabers clashing. I don't think. Not at all. There's no lightsaber on lightsaber in this. And,
really?
And part of that is probably because Luke is a force projection, and it's unclear how, tactile he really can be. He gives Leia the dice, but then later they disappear. Things like that. So it's like he's there physically, but not really there physically because he's also not moving the salt.
I didn't realize there wasn't saber on saber.
There is no saber on saber action, which sounds like a euphemism for something else entirely. But yeah, there's no sword fight of that kind, nor is there lightsabers hitting each other in this movie. So I thought that was an interesting choice for this film, but also underscores his whole the idea that the Jedi are supposed to be basically like space monks in a way, So he dies with peace and purpose.
Yes.
He's not there to fight. He's there to pretend to fight to keep the dude busy so they can leave.
Right.
But he's not really there to hurt anybody.
Right.
So his lightsaber has no reason to hit anything else. He just basically dodges it.
He does some pretty amazing defensive moves.
To buy time until Kylo straight up impales him with the saber, swipes him and then impales him. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not here, dude. Don't worry about it. See you around, kid.
Yep.
So I love that and the way it informs his story arc, and it's a version of the Jedi that we feel like we haven't really gotten to this point. And yes, they're warriors, but they're also peacekeepers. They're also spiritual figures. Right. They're not supposed to they're not an army. Essentially,
right.
They're not supposed to be. That's not their function.
Right.
And I like that this movie gets at that.
His death was so beautiful.
It really was. The binary sunset, just like A New Hope, just like the end of Revenge of the Sith. That's kind of his thing, the binary sunset. The look on his face that he just kind of accepts it. He's because he knew doing that was going to cost him his life. He knew that was the sacrifice he was making.
And he came to the island to die anyway. So.
Exactly what he said. Yeah. So it is sad, but it's also in a way kind of a happy ending for him. I mean, if he's gonna go out, he went out to ensure that the Resistance's mission, which was to survive, as Holdo says earlier in the movie, that it succeeds. That's his goal, is to keep them fighting and for another day. And plus, we know he's gonna be back in the next one. We know we're gonna get Force Luke. Force Ghost Luke.
That's exciting.
And that's probably the form in which he says, everything, 1,000 generations live in you now. It's like we taught you everything we know. That whole thing. It's like, all right, it's all you now. It's all you, Rey. No pressure.
It's gonna be great.
No
I think
pressure.
it was such an elevated way for him to die than to be just struck down or
it's not violent.
Grow old, I mean.
Yeah, it's the Obi-Wan style. Obi-Wan died in a battle, kinda, but really because he led himself. But yeah, the other option was going out like Qui-Gon Jinn, on the floor gasping for air, and I think
that's no fun.
Yeah, I think this is the best way to, I think, a better way to honor the character and his legacy as the central figure of the last trilogy, the legend that Rey was seeking out in the last film. I kind of think we're wrapping up here, but it does seem, we talked about a little bit the love dynamic. It seems like it's very much shifting, the romantic thing, because as you mentioned, there's a new lady who's on a mission on at least a part of the next film.
Yeah.
With Finn. Then there's Rose.
Very pretty lady.
Yeah. Then there's Rey and Kylo, and there's Poe. Not that everybody needs to be paired up, but at some point we're like,
something needs to happen.
A bunch of good-looking people. Something needs to go down here. So we'll see what happens with that. I kind of like the idea of Rey with Poe, but I also kind of like the idea of Rey with no one.
Yes.
I think that this is one of the things that's going back to our last episode together. It's It's one of the things about Captain Marvel that I like so much. It's like she's not, there is no romantic figure for her. She doesn't have like feelings for Jan Rog or there's no like boyfriend in her life or girlfriend or whatever. It's kind of like her, it's about her living up to herself, not about her trying to win somebody's love or whatever, prove herself worthy. And so I kind of hope...
Spiritual meaning of the virgin, she who is whole unto herself.
Right.
Which also makes sense for the Force, having that balance and being complete and total within herself. So it would be great, but Kylo's pretty fine. So I don't know. I would like to at least see some kind of play off between them again. You know, maybe a little bit more than finger touching, but
hey, this is a family movie. I don't know how much you want to see that they're willing to show. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with Rey and with the Reylo of it all. I definitely think that the creative people behind the trilogy are aware that people are shipping that. And I definitely think they're going to lean into that in this next film, whether it winds up well for Rey and Kylo as a couple or not. I almost feel like, though, if this is really going to be the end of the Skywalker saga, kind of need...
Why would you call it the rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
You know, if it's the end.
But it should be the end of but it's the end of the line of the Skywalker line. I kind of feel like that Kylo Ren should die for that to be the case.
Oh.
Because otherwise it leaves it open for more Skywalker. Because he's the last one, assuming that Leia doesn't survive the next film. Kylo Ren is the only person left that we know of with Skywalker blood. So I kind of feel like that needs to be the case. And some theories that I've seen, and I know I said earlier I haven't really read theories, but this was before we knew much about Rise of Skywalker at all, is that maybe Skywalker is going to be kind of the next, kind of the term that the galaxy will use for that gray Jedi concept that we just came up with, that we mentioned.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like instead of Jedi and Sith, they'll just be called Skywalkers. So maybe that's a way to end the Skywalker line, but have the Skywalker name prevail and carry on. And that little broom kid who we already mentioned, and I'm just trying to bring it up again because now we're at that point.
Maybe he's a Skywalker.
Maybe, we don't know. But the legend of Luke Skywalker
theories.
is spreading, and I love that. It's the most powerful ending that this movie could possibly have. Is now other people are learning about the Force and like developing or tapping into their own. Their own
books
potential.
are off the island.
Exactly.
I like that too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes.
Any other thoughts on?
I also like the last Force time that Kylo and Rey have when she's getting everybody on the ship. And he sees her and she sees him, and then she's like, "Peace out," and she just shuts the door on him.
Yep.
That was kind of interesting. So
he's like, "Are you gonna let me? What's going on? Are we good?" She's like, "No, we're not good."
Right.
He's like, please. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm very curious to see how Palpatine ties into it. I'm obviously, like I said, I have kind of mixed feelings about whether or not Ben is worthy of redemption at this point. But like I said, I also kind of feel like he needs to not be around in order for this to be the end of the Skywalker line, legit. So... what are your thoughts? What are you hoping / expecting to see?
Maybe, I mean, I hadn't theorized before, but now that we're talking about it, I feel like maybe it would be nice if he becomes the first gray Jedi. And he redeems himself, and he's a Skywalker. He is the rise of Skywalker that we're talking about. That would be my hope.
Maybe, yeah.
That would be my last hope.
And him and Rey live happily ever after?
Yes.
We'll see. Anything's possible. We're still, a couple months away from it now, but...
I mean, we definitely see them face off in these...
over water as opposed to fire, so that's
Yes.
cool. Going into the elemental side of it. I don't know. I don't really think we have much else to say. I think we've just exhausted The Last Jedi. We've talked almost as long as The Last Jedi is at this point, and that's the longest Star Wars movie, too. It's 152 minutes, I think I saw, and... that's the longest Star Wars movie to date. I have a feeling The Rise of Skywalker will probably beat that. If we got a 3-hour Avengers movie, and this is going to be the last of the Skywalker saga of Star Wars, obviously not the last Star Wars movie because Disney likes money and fans like more stories.
Yep.
But I have a feeling we're going to probably get like 245, 250. It's going to be nearing the 3-hour mark. I wouldn't be surprised.
I hope so.
There's a lot of stories, a lot to wrap up.
Lot to do.
Yeah, but the question of balance, I think, is the one that we both really want to see addressed. Like, whether it's Grey Jedi, Skywalker, whatever the hell you want to call it, I think that is really the key to ending this franchise and having it feel like the period at the end of a 9-film sentence.
We need a permanent peace instead of just vacillating back and forth between periods of peace and then chaos and war and whatnot. I definitely feel we want a final.
No more Star Wars. There's too many wars in the stars.
Right. Star Love.
There you go.
Star Peace.
That'll be the spin-off, Star Love, starring Reylo. So
make it happen, Disney.
Yeah,
make it happen.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm a little nervous knowing that this is the last one. I'm like, all right, you better tie it all up. I mean, I've been talking about Avengers Endgame all year, so this will be another way that Disney can keep that momentum going as far as ending these long-going stories.
Avengers is now still going. I mean,
yeah, but it's an end to an era in a way,
yeah.
And I feel like that's very much how the issue is with Rise of Skywalker. So, Kerri Jones, thank you for coming on the
Thanks
Crooked
for having
Table
me, Rob.
podcast. I literally don't think we have anything. I have no more thoughts to express right now. But I'm
done, son.
I'm glad that we were able to get all that out there, and I know you were excited to talk about this movie as well.
I love this movie.
You're
right.
Too.
This is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Except maybe the next one. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Depends on what they do with how much finger touching happens in it.
Yes.
If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.